I am for violence if nonviolence means we continue postponing a solution to the American black man's problem just to avoid violence.
While Malcolm X was growing up, he saw the evil in the world and in all the people around him. He was faced with an abundance of struggles and only continued to see how cruel the world and the people in it could be. Malcolm was led to a life of crime and ended up in prison at the age of 20. In prison, he was able to educate himself and gain knowledge, so he was able to create an educated plan and motive to provide a voice for his race. He used his intellectual resources to destroy black self-hate and replace it with black self-esteem.
Malcolm X's father, Reverend Earl Little, was a dedicated organizer for the Universal Negro Improvement Association and often received threats from the Ku Klux Klan for spreading trouble. Earl's civil rights activism also prompted death threats from the Black Legion, a white racist group. The family was forced to relocate many times because of racism. No matter where the family moved, they were still frequently harassed.
While living in an all-white neighborhood in Michigan, their house was burned down. When Malcolm was 6 years old, his father was murdered and his body was found lying across the town's trolley tracks. The police ruled the burning of their house and the death of his father both accidents, but the family was certain that members of the Black Legion were responsible for these tragedies. Malcolm's mother, Louise, suffered an emotional breakdown after the death of her husband and was placed in a mental institution. The children were split up and placed in different foster homes. Malcolm was then younger than 10 years old and had already seen what terrible things people were capable of doing.
The second semester of Malcolm's 7th grade year, he was elected class president. He had the highest grades in the school, and he was doing a phenomenal job with his schoolwork. In 8th grade, Malcolm one day ended up alone with his English teacher, which he thought liked him. His teacher asked Malcolm if he had ever given any thought as to what career he would like. Malcolm told him that he would like to be a lawyer, and his teacher looked surprised at his response. His teacher responded by saying, "Malcolm, one of life's first needs is for us to be realistic. Don't misunderstand me now. We all like you. You know that. But you've got to be realistic about being a black man. A lawyer, that's no realistic goal for a black man. You need to think about something you can be."
Teachers encouraged all the white children, no matter how unrealistic their dreams could be. He realized that even though he was smarter than all the other white students, he would never actually be smarter in his teacher's eyes. Malcolm became despondent and his schoolwork suffered. As he grew older, Malcolm started to see more and more discrimination every single day, and it was easier for him to understand why. A teacher that he thought liked him as a student had just told him he could not follow his dreams because of his race. At 13 years old, Malcolm was charged with delinquency and sent to a juvenile detention home. He dropped out of school at the age of 15.
Malcolm asked to be transferred to the custody of his half-sister Ella, who lived in Boston. Once the request was granted, he went off to live with her. While in Boston, Malcolm found himself attracted to the ghetto street life rather than Ella's upper-class Roxbury society. One of his friends got him a job as a shoeshine boy at Roseland Ballroom, and this became the center of his social life. He spent most of his time there dancing and learning the trades of the conman, the pimp, the dope pusher, and the thief. Malcolm was now 16 and too young for the army, but he lied about his age to get a job on the railroad. He was later fired from this job because of wild behavior, and he moved to Harlem.
He then got a job as a waiter at a famous Harlem club. He was fired for soliciting an army spy for a prostitute. He naturally moved to jobs such as selling marijuana, stick-ups, pimping, robbery, numbers running, and bootlegging. Malcolm was mentally disqualified for military service when he said that he wanted to steal some guns and kill some crackers. He returned to Boston, where he and 4 accomplices committed a series of burglaries targeting wealthy white families. He was arrested while picking up a stolen watch he had left at a shop for repairs, and in February began serving an 8 to 10 year sentence at Charlestown State Prison for larceny and breaking and entering.
While in prison, Malcolm changed and began to transform his life. He was greatly influenced by a prisoner named John Bembry, who went by Bimby. Bimby was a self-educated man who convinced Malcolm on the value of education. Malcolm got a dictionary and began painstakingly copying every entry. It took him a day just to finish the first page, but he continued copying. He began reading books on people, animals, places, history, philosophy, genetics, science, and religion. Malcolm was constantly reading and educating himself on the information he missed after school.
While Malcolm was in prison, his siblings wrote to him about the new religious movement preaching black self-reliance. Malcolm became intrigued in learning more about the Nation of Islam. He started to study it, mostly about the leader Elijah Muhammad. He would write to Elijah Muhammad to learn more about the Nation of Islam. In 1952, Malcolm was a devoted follower to the Nation of Islam. At this time, he had changed his surname from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X because he considered Little as a slave name.
Over the years, Malcolm became very intelligent and articulate and was appointed as minister and national spokesman for the Nation of Islam. Muhammad charged Malcolm with establishing new mosques. There were some in cities such as Detroit and Harlem. Malcolm started using the radio, television, and newspaper articles to get word out about the Nation of Islam around the United States. Malcolm gained thousands of new followers for the Nation of Islam. He is known for increasing the Nation of Islam from 500 to 30,000 people just from 1952 to 1963. He would teach people that blacks were the original people of the world. He tried to convince that whites were the devil. He would teach people that blacks were superior to whites and that the demise of the white race is imminent.
In 1958, Malcolm married Betty Shabazz, whom he met in the Nation of Islam. Malcolm and Betty had 4 daughters.
While Malcolm was still in the Nation of Islam, tensions started to occur between him and Elijah Muhammad. There were rumors that Elijah Muhammad was conducting extramarital affairs with young nation secretaries. Malcolm would refuse to help Elijah Muhammad's request to help cover up the affairs and subsequent children. Elijah would constitute a serious violation of nation's teachings. Soon Elijah Muhammad confirmed that the rumors were true. Malcolm left the Nation of Islam because he thought it had gone as far as it can. He planned to organize a black nationalist organization.
After Malcolm left the Nation of Islam, he founded Muslim Mosque Incorporated, a religious organization. He started the Organization of Afro-American Unity, a secular group that advocated Pan-Africanism. Malcolm started speaking about his beliefs for the blacks. He met Martin Luther King Jr. and would talk to him about his beliefs. On April 13, 1964, Malcolm went on a pilgrimage to Mecca. He traveled to Africa, the United Kingdom, and France. He began to realize that the whiteness he had fought and hated in America was not so much a matter of color, as the Nation of Islam taught, but a matter of attitude and behavior.
The experience in Mecca changed Malcolm's perspective. He no longer thought whites were the devil. The voyage to Mecca helped him realize that the thing that mattered most was self-respect. In my 39 years on earth, the holy city of Mecca had been the first time I had ever stood before the Creator of all and felt like a complete human being. A quote from Malcolm in his autobiography. Malcolm described his time at Mecca as it had been a long journey in a brief life.
After Malcolm decided not to keep quiet about Elijah Muhammad's adultery, making the comment about President Kennedy's assassination and being suspended from the Nation of Islam, a member of Malcolm's temple confessed to him that he had been ordered to assassinate Malcolm by bombing his car. The last few months of his life, he was under a continual threat of assassination by the black Muslims. His family was threatened with eviction from their home, and his house was later firebombed. The black Muslims countered with the charge that Malcolm had bombed the house himself for the sake of publicity. After repeated attempts for his life, Malcolm rarely traveled without bodyguards.
Malcolm was to speak at an Organization of Afro-American Unity meeting at the Ballroom in Harlem. As he began to speak, a fight broke out in the audience. 3 gunmen, which were all members of the Nation of Islam, approached the stage and shot Malcolm 15 times at a close range. Malcolm died instantly. 15,000 people attended Malcolm's funeral, and friends of Malcolm's took the shovels away from the waiting gravediggers and buried him themselves.
Malcolm X revolutionized the black mind by turning African Americans into proud and self-confident people. The mainstream black leaders who dismissed him as a troublemaker today embrace his cultural philosophy and urge blacks to love themselves before they think about loving others.
Malcolm realized that history had been whitened. He said, expressing his anger, "The lie that has been told to generations of blacks and whites. Little innocent black children born of parents who believed that their race had no history. Little black children seeing, before they could talk, that their parents considered themselves inferior. Innocent little black children growing up, living out their lives, dying of old age, and all their lives ashamed of being black." Malcolm dared to speak truth to power by offering a revolutionary vision of new American and global society and, through his own activism, attempted to turn his dream into a reality.
Malcolm X's childhood led him to illegal activities in the ghetto, but he was able to educate himself and become a knowledgeable man when he was released. He spent his life giving a voice to the rights that he believed in and to the people who were unable to speak for themselves. He gave African American people self-esteem and helped them reconnect with their African heritage. He influenced the political and social thinking of African Americans.